Rosemary's
Rosemary's
Baby.
Baby. And Miss Horror Films.
Alpha.
This is a body horror film directed by the French genius female director. When it comes to her, film fans will immediately think of what made her famous. Be Raw and Satighting, which won the notorious Palme d'Or. Her works have always been known for their bold avant-garde visual language and profound exploration of physical and mental suffering. And Soy Alpha as another masterpiece of hers cleverly fuses body horror with the philosophy of life and death. Only 1 week after its release, it has already captivated audiences with its disruptive storytelling and thought-provoking themes, earning an impressive rating of 85 on Dubin and taking home a major award at the notorious Cannes Film Festival. The film explores a question that any one of us may face in our lifetime. How do we confront the inevitable end of life? How do we face it? And when a loved one chooses to give up, how do we learn to let go? Alright, enough talk. Follow me into today's story. The story takes place in a society shrouded by the shadow of petrification disease. This virus spreads mainly through blood and saliva. Once infected, the patient's body begins a slow and painful process of petrification, from loss of skin elasticity to muscle rigidity, to internal organs and bones eventually turning completely into hard stone. The entire process could last up to a year. Patients remain fully conscious, forced to watch themselves march toward death. One night, Sarah the mother was washing her rebellious teenage daughter Alpha when she noticed a new tattoo on her arm. Sarah's face turned ghostly pale. In this era, ravaged by the virus, any behavior that could lead to blood contact is nothing short of a gamble with life. As a doctor, she knows all too well the horrors of the virus. She immediately grabs an alcohol swab, regardless of her daughter's struggles and cries, frantically wiping away at that tattoo, as if trying to completely erase this ominous mark from her daughter's skin. The next day, Sarah immediately took Alpha to the hospital where she worked for a blood test and got a tetanus shot, but it would take a long 2 weeks for the test results to come back. These 2 weeks of waiting were unbearably cruel for Alpha. Her life was completely turned upside down. In class at school, she unconsciously scratched at the tattooed area. When called upon by the teacher to answer a question, the wound on her tattoo suddenly split open, bleeding onto the desk. The classmates beside her were all terrified. After all, no one wants to catch the terrifying petrification disease. During gym class, the classmates deliberately hit her in the head with a volleyball. The ball she touched would be carefully wrapped in a towel by the teacher and thrown into the trash like medical waste. Even her boyfriend, Ed, started constantly asking about her test results. His concern mixed with an undeniable fear. A heartbroken Alpha didn't go to the infirmary, but went straight home instead. But as soon as she entered, she sensed something was off. The things at home were in a complete mess. She immediately became alert, ran to the kitchen, and grabbed a knife for self-defense. Just at this moment, a haggard-looking man barged in. He claimed to be Alpha's Uncle Amin. Looking at the dense needle marks on Amin's arms and his overall disheveled demeanor, Alpha didn't believe him at all. That this suddenly appeared drug addict could be her uncle. However, just as they were confronting each other, Sarah came back and confirmed that the man in front of them was indeed her uncle. The siblings sat on the couch, chatting happily, as if they hadn't seen each other for many years, yet were still very close. That night, Mother took them both to a family dinner to celebrate great-grandma's 120th birthday. This was a huge family. More than 20 people gathered around the table chatting merrily. But amidst all this liveliness, Alpha and Uncle Amin seemed out of place. No one was talking to Amin. He was like a ghost, drifting outside this huge family gathering. Soon, he got tired of this vibe and walked into the inner room alone. Sarah saw this and her face changed. She put down her bowl and followed him. They didn't come out for a long time. Alpha sensed something was wrong and excused herself to the bathroom, quietly following them. When she peeked through the door crack, she saw something shocking.
Not here, damn it! Not here, damn it!
The pressure was pushing Alpha to the edge. During another gym class, her classmates cornered her in the pool bathroom, not letting her get in the water. Cornered and desperate, she finally snapped. She burst open the door, rushed up to a girl, stuck out her tongue and licked spit on her face, then spat thick phlegm on another. In a way that almost destroyed herself, she declared war on this world that shunned her. But when she jumped into the pool, those classmates swarmed and pushed her under. Fighting to survive, Alpha swam hard, but didn't see the pool wall ahead and slammed right into it. Blood instantly stained the pool red. Classmates screamed and scattered. Mom also got the news of her daughter's negative test, but this good news didn't clear the worry from her face at all. She tested her daughter a second and third time. This distrust and control made Alpha feel suffocated. She didn't understand why she wasn't sick, but kept getting treated like this. She told all her anger to her uncle, Amin. Amin knew his sister's suffocating control. Well, for his niece's sake, he had a huge fight with Sarah. He told Sarah, no matter if Alpha is infected or not, what she needs most now is to live her life, not be trapped in a cage of fear for her whole life. These words really hit Sarah's nerve. In the heat of the argument, Alpha also lost herself. That night, Alpha woke up from a nightmare, only to find her uncle had been watching over her by the bedside. Amin also decided to take her away from this place to truly live once. They climbed out of the window and ran wildly onto a football field crowded with people, then headed to a seedy underground bar, where most of the patrons were petrification patients, uncertain whether death or tomorrow would come first. Here they used alcohol and music to burn what little life they had left. But at the height of the revelry, Aiming's arm suddenly began to twitch uncontrollably, followed by pain throughout his body. He realized that he had been ravaged by drugs and illness, leaving him with little time. He immediately pulled Alpha out of the bar, but after stepping outside, ignoring Alpha's calls, he staggered off alone into the endless darkness. With nowhere else to go, Alpha sought out her boyfriend, Little Black, wanting to experience the taste of love in her final moments. However, just as they were getting intimate, Alpha was horrified to discover that Little Black had a tattoo identical to hers on his back. It turned out that day in the black market tattoo parlor, she wasn't the only one who got inked. Little Black chose to hide it out of fear of being ostracized. This discovery was the last straw that broke Alpha. She went mad and fled from there, but fortunately, on the bus, she encountered Uncle Aiming again. At this point, Aiming's face was ashen. With a tone as if settling his affairs, he told Alpha to listen to her mother, and made a request of her.
If I fall asleep, don't wake me. Don't wake me.
Looking into Aiming's incredibly serious eyes, Alpha didn't understand, but she agreed anyway. After getting off the bus, Aiming walked straight to an empty road, pulled out some medicine and a syringe preparing to inject himself. Alpha thought he was about to get high again and wanted to stop him, but hesitated. Unexpectedly, after the injection, Aiming collapsed stiffly to the ground. His breathing became faint. Alpha was terrified. She completely forgot the promise she had just made. Rushing to the nearest hotel, she called her mother Sarah for help. However, just as the call connected, the camera abruptly cuts. Everything on screen rewinds 10 years into the past. The phone continues to ring. It's still Sarah answering the call. She receives the same message from Alpha once again and rushes over to the hotel in her car. But this time the person on the other end of the line is still an innocent little girl unaware of the world. On that night, 10 years ago, Amin, suffering from petrification disease and drug addiction, could no longer endure the torment of his illness. He brought his young niece Alpha to this hotel, wanting her to witness his death. Watching her brother so determined to die, Sarah believed that a bad life is better than a good death, that life should never be given up willingly. But Amin had made up his mind. He only wanted to find fleeting pleasure in drugs and end his endless suffering with dignity. During their argument, Amin still injected the syringe into his body, gradually losing consciousness. As she watched her brother stop breathing, Sarah's emotions collapsed instantly. At that moment, she regretted. She couldn't bear to lose her only brother. So, she desperately began performing CPR. Here, the film uses an extremely sophisticated editing technique, overlaying two timelines together. The adult Alpha appears in the scene from 10 years ago, desperately trying to stop her mother. She knows that her mother's rescue back was actually the wrong decision. It stripped her uncle of his right to choose death, and pushed him into an even deeper abyss of pain. However, the Sarah in the memory can't hear her daughter's cries. After realizing CPR isn't working, she pulls out adrenaline from her bag and forcefully injects it into Amin's heart. In violent convulsions, Amin is forcibly revived, but the look of unbearable agony on his face shows, being brought back to life. Time jumps forward. 1 year later, Sarah visits the hospital with a smile. By the bedside, it was Amin who she saved a year ago. At this moment, he had completely turned into a human-shaped stone. Only his eyes could still move faintly. His only wish was to end this hellish pain as soon as possible. But Sarah kept rambling in his ear about the latest treatment. In the end, Amin, in endless despair, ended his life that had been forcibly prolonged. Alpha is undoubtedly an outstanding film. Beneath the guise of body horror, it tells a universal story about love loss and reconciliation. The unique petrification disease in the movie is a terrifying existence that everyone fears. But the biggest horror of the film isn't the bodies turning into stone, but Sarah's suffocating need for control, cloaked in the name of love. She defines good and bad by her own standards, and decides others' life and death based on her own will. This kind of love eventually becomes a double-edged sword, hurting the person she loves the most, and imprisoning herself. We always think that love is holding on tight, but this movie tells us, sometimes, the deepest love is learning to let go.